This is Christopher Drake of Low Country Stories and Guest, and I'm proud to present to you our very first video interview. And who would have that honor? Me, mainly. And who would be bestowing that honor but Mr. Sean Stone himself, writer, filmmaker, and the host of probably what would be my favorite TV show on Gaia. All right, well, here we are. Where are you located there, Sean?
Oh, we're hanging out of Sahara, and yeah, just enjoying nature at this time when everyone's on quarantine and lockdown. I'm, having the privilege of just being out in nature and having some solitude here.
I was watching some of your videos. I'm like, wow, is that planet Earth? I mean, it's amazing. But, I mean, cities and the urban, it corrupts to me, and it wears you down, and you really need to get out in nature and recharge every now and again. I'm glad to see you doing it, especially in these times that are kind of trying as they are. And, I mean, it's really an interesting time we're living in, to say the least. I mean, they're not interested in a positive way.
Yeah, in every way, in every way. I mean, so many things to say about it, but it's like the dark and light are really coming to the forefront here and having their way with each other, starting to enter it, and this is the opportunity before us. Basically, do we light up? Do we rise into our higher frequency and octaves, or do we fall back into that fear modality that is so preternatural and animalistic within the human psyche? And obviously, that's been the bane of our existence for so many centuries, has been our fear and our ability to just fall into fear and turn it, whether it's fear of another, right, an enemy, another race, another religion, another country. Now it's fear of your neighbor, anyone that has corona, that's spreading corona. I mean, this is all that program, right, that's so deep-seated. And so really the essence of evil in our world is that fear, whereas the love vibration I feel coming through, and this is the opportunity now really to rise into a new reality.
I believe so. And we've really kind of had things rearranged a bit. And aside from, obvious economic impacts and whatnot, I don't see it as being such a bad thing so far. We're spending more time with our families. We're spending more time outdoors. And once again, I mean, it's we're giving the world a little chance to catch a breather, so to speak, too, I'm sure you
Yeah.
noticed that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is, again, as I said, there's a real battle going on between dark and light, and then at certain levels, I think this was a plandemic, as they say, a planned release of a bioweapon. At the same time, it's healthy because we got out of our cities, we got out of our loop and our pattern of being in constant cycles of, go to work and worry about all these daily duties that we have, right? Our routines, our daily routines, and all of a sudden we was able to break that pattern and come within ourselves and take off the social masks and all the things.
Very true. I totally.
Who am I about?
We really is when we're searching for balance. I mean, and whatnot. Of course, that's mostly an individual thing, but as a whole, how do you think the balance of the world is right now between the light and the dark? Is it too much? Is it still way on the dark side?
No, because I see it like this. I see the dark side is rolling out 5G. They want to basically turn us into the Internet of Things, the total, you know, virtual control of our reality through everything from chipping, nanotech, the metallicization of our lives, right? That's why, you're being censored on Google. You can't talk about 5G on Google. You can't talk
Right.
about certain things, right? They're like coming down so hard on Google and Facebook and all this stuff. Censor, censor, censor. And then I see people like spreading information about the cabal and the Illuminati and the dark side and their agenda. At the same time, it's like, wow, people are waking up at the moment that the dark side is like, okay, we're going to lock down, but the dark side can't win because I keep telling people the dark side can't create new. The dark is ultimately a feeder. It feeds like a parasite, right? It feeds on that which already exists. It feeds on life, kind of
Right.
like the virus. And so, the virus itself, is a I say like an extension of that artificial intelligence. It's an extension of that dark intelligence, which can't create new, which is what we are as human beings. We're living beings that are looking to create something new. And I felt that coming for a while now. It was like the death of the human was just recycling old patterns, recycling old thoughts, recycling old movies. And then at a certain point, it was like, no, life is going to win here. Life prevails always. So this is really, I think the light is getting brighter and more intense here, and actually like the entire frequency of the planet, we're shifting. It's rising galactically, and post 2012, we're rising the galactic plane. So the light's just going to become blinding for a lot of people, and it's going to really destroy their whole reality, and it's going to prevail. It's just, what does the actual balance look like? It's extreme. It's like the extreme polarity that comes before the integration that is inevitable. The integration.
Well, I think a good analogy too, that goes along with what you're saying, is someone who's never been out of a boat and they spend time on the water. They're in this boat and suddenly they see a leak and they realize that the boat is not in. I mean, it's not a invincible thing, that you've got to learn to swim, and
Hmm.
you've got to get out there and get in the water a little bit and start swimming and figure it out, because society, being the boat, is paper thin. I mean, we're seeing that now, that huge measures have to take place to try to buffer us from the lifestyle that we've been accustomed to, paycheck to paycheck, not
Hmm.
saving food and resources, that sort of thing. And now we see a leak in the boat. Now it's time to learn to swim on our own. And that can lead to a lot of good things, because the ocean's a big place.
Yeah, well, I always say the ocean is the unconscious mind, right? And the unconscious mind is so much more unfathomable. In fact, the unconscious mind is like what's beneath the surface. The surface is like the
Right.
conscious ourselves that is just waiting to be explored, and from that unconscious space, I believe we actually create our reality at a level that people have always said like, oh, you're creating your own reality, but it's too simplistic, because it's not. Your mind is not conscious. Most of your mind, most of your awareness, most of your existence is unconscious, right? It's the unconscious
Yeah.
beliefs, blood, ancestral beliefs, soul karma, soul relationships, all these things that it basically exist beyond your immediate awareness. And so being able to explore the ocean, as you say, is also really diving deep into conscious within ourselves, right? And being able to go there and say, okay, let's explore this. Let's really go into my fear. Let's really go into my belief structure. Let's go into my behaviors, and how can I deconstruct it and recognize, well, what's underlying it? What's at the root? And you just keep going deeper and deeper, and ultimately, we find that at the end of the day, we are just beings that are love and light, but we've been clouded and blocked by so many conditions, and uh, people have betrayed us or hurt us or mistreated us, and we put up all these barriers and these walls, and ultimately, instead of keeping people out, we've actually locked ourselves within it.
Oh, exactly. Sometimes a fortress and a prison can be the same thing.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I really like what you said on one of your videos I was watching about it being a prison planet,
Mm. Well, that's cool.
and I really like that. We have a show coming out where I'm going to be reading a lot of my unpublished works, and it's called Model Prisoner. And
Mm.
anyways, it's you'll see it when it comes out. It's we're building the set for it now and everything. It's going to be really neat. But um, I do believe this has been an engineered plague, and I believe that it was probably engineered in China to clear off the protesters that were you know on the streets and all. And I think they were trying to avoid another Tiananmen Square, because at Tiananmen Square, I don't think it could take place in this day and age like it did, you know, back in the 80s, because of the fact that we have the internet now. Too much word would get out. Most people don't realize what happened at Tiananmen Square. So I
Right.
believe they engineered this virus, and I think that it's been capitalized on by other people. And I'm not blaming the Chinese people by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it was a weapon probably designed to go after them. So, but in any case, everything I've ever read on biological warfare and that sort of thing, I've researched it extensively for my books. It does sound like it was engineered.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and the question of, ultimately, the dark cabal, whether it's, basically connected to here, to the elements here that we know about, um, it's difficult. It's difficult to know. At the end of the day, it's not, I think it's more important to realize that I think this is an opportunity, and I do
Exactly.
believe what Q talks about. I do believe in the patriots. I do believe in those that, I felt it since Trump came to office, and he said, he had a quote about the blood of patriots, and I kind of immediately picked up that there was something going on that's much deeper with Trump than just what people think, and especially the more that they attack him in the mainstream media, the more it makes me believe that he's doing the right things, because this media is so backwards. They were not. These guys are professional liars, and they're always wrong. So I just kind of
Right.
watch. Okay, these guys hate Trump this much. Okay, there's some good things he's doing. So I really believe in the Patriots, and I believe that they're doing some things behind the scenes and using this opportunity. And I got to trust that, because otherwise, this country is done if we don't clear out some of these these dark cabal elements.
Very, very insightful. The next thing I would like to talk about is your book and your latest piece of art to give to the world. And have I've listened to it a bit, and it is absolutely amazing. I mean, I really it really blew away my expectations. So let's talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Oh, you want me to just talk about it?
Oh, let's tell us all about it.
Yeah, so thank you for the compliment. Desiderata is called a cosmic fairy tale. I put it out under the pseudonym Ali, because it felt like, I don't know, there's a certain energy to it that I had just, um, it came from somewhere else, honestly. I channeled it over the course of certain time period. It was, a few weeks I was writing it, and it's basically a cosmic love story of two people who are sort of in their Eden, their paradise, and they are uh, intercepted by a dark magician, a sorcerer who steals souls, and he's jealous of these two, and so he casts them out into this world, and essentially the world they're cast into is very akin to our own, and we don't really track her in many different forms. He finds her in the form of a mother, of a friend, of a seductress, of a lover. All these different modalities, right? Ultimately realizing that she is essentially the goddess, and he is a god in their own right, because their souls are transcendent of this realm, but they're caught in the struggle of what it is, to be human, right? And ultimately, it's the idea that we go through these lives, and we find these, our soulmates over and over again in these different forms. But ultimately, the message, well, there's many messages. I don't know. I think people should take away what they want from it, but I think the ultimate message is that love is transcendent, and it's always the oneness that that supersedes everything. If we can just get beyond, uh, it's there for a purpose. It's there for experience. We learn. This planet can be a prison or it can be a school. They can feel the same way. It depends on how if you love your
Right.
school or if you hate your school, right? Uh, and I think that's really the point: is what can you take away from this journey, and ultimately realize that it's only temporary. It's not. This is not permanent. We're not, here on Earth to be, to be in love with this physical realm. It's to learn from it and have experiences and explore it, and ultimately to leave it.
That's that would be probably if you had to sum up something to tell someone you never see again that would help them through life, it'd probably be that sentence right there. So definitely. But your pacing in the book and your tone, everything is just spot on. I mean, you really ought to stick with that medium. It is great. And, you know, I would probably attempt an audiobook myself one day, but I have to take some accent reduction classes so people can understand me.
You'd be good. You'd be good for like a country, for like a western, like a not western audiobook or something, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I got that. I got that down. But actually, just a quick story. I went and I lived in Canada for a while, and I was at a pub, and I was talking to a young lady, and an older man was trying to talk to her too. Well, she got up to use the restroom. The older man leaned into me and said, "I've been down south, and let me tell you, your accent's fake. I just want to let you know that you're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows you're faking it." I said, "You know what? I think I still got a Georgia driver's license around here somewhere. I can show you." So, if it sounds that thick that it's fake, there you go. But
That's
the
funny. That's too funny.
have you got any other published works out there, or beside the in audio or text?
Yeah, and I was saying as a writer, I got a New World Order that I wrote a few years ago. New World Order is very much in the conspiratorial realm, but all done fact-based and researched. I couldn't get into the the Illuminati and the black magic kind of aspects of it. I focused really on the politics, and
Right,
it was really about the political spectrum of the New World Order being an emanation or continuation of the British Empire. Basically, the British Empire gobbled America up through the course of the 20th century, and to this day, what the dark cabal that people are talking about is really linked to is they call globalists, right? Like Alex Jones
right,
calls globalists. Yeah, I mean these guys, they don't care about America. They're imperialists. In the old days, you just call them imperialists. They don't care about the American people. They don't care about the American, based upon people like Henry Clay and Henry Carey. The idea that you had a relationship to infrastructure and development and industry to build your nation, and then so there's a nice balance between the private sector, obviously, but there's also government to support and stimulate your economy with things like infrastructure projects, right, and things
right.
to connect the people and to bring markets together. So that whole system, that whole school of thought, was buried by the British schools of thought, which is the British schools of thought are both Marxism, right? Because Marx
Right.
studied in England and he was trained in England. He was basically, he's an extension of the British Empire, and so is Adam
Joseph
Smith and that
Engels.
whole. Yeah, I was just saying a lot of the modalities of IMF structures and the legal structures and the idea of America having bases all over the world and having a military presence everywhere and being the policeman. That's all British Empire stuff, man. That's not the American way. So I
Right.
think New World is a good book to read to remind ourselves, this is all the British taking over the traditional American republic, which is what we are. We're a republic. We're not designed to basically take over the world and be the policeman of the globe. We're designed to be a model for the rest of the world to follow.
Well said. I started off being very anti-communist when I was young in the '80s, and I was just everything communist under every bed, in the bushes everywhere, communism. And then I figured out as time went by that my problem wasn't necessarily with the communists; it was just with the globalists. That was the aspects of communism I found most frightening was the globalist aspirations of it. And then now, of course, I feel like that you know communism, like especially Stalinism, more or less been put to bed, in a global sense, and that they've figured out that okay, we can still have our way, we just have to use capitalism more,
Hmm.
and that they've continued on that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean the so-called neoliberalism, right? That was, to me, the American system is what built America into this great economic powerhouse by the end of World War II, right? And all that industry. And the idea was, this fear of communism. I think it was, yes, I'm not a fan of communism, but I think it was a lot of it was designed to destroy the benefits. They wanted to have obviously a good paycheck. We don't see that anymore, right? Most people don't get, union wages in their lifestyle. So you understand how this whole country was sort of ground down from the 70s, really when we went off the gold standard. From that time period, Vietnam gold standard to now, we've seen our wages just diminished, right? And so they call it like, well, inflation and all that, but really, it's like, when you're I worked a union job, when you're getting paid, 30 bucks an hour or so, That's much more helpful for life than if you're being paid minimum wage at less than $10 an hour, right?
Right.
So you have to imagine how the purchasing power of people, we talk about how they, they're not saving up. Well, it's hard to save up in this economy when you're talking about the rents, the cost of rents, the cost of the insurances, the cost of just food and basic, like it's there's a reason that most Americans are living on credit and debt, and that's very much the modality that was pushed by the financiers, by the banksters, because bankers don't want you to be able to how do you say, have an income to pay your bills outright. They want you to be living on debt, right? They want you to be squeezed with perpetual debt. Whereas the business model, the real businessman's model, like a Henry Ford, he was saying, look, I want my workers to have decent wages so they can buy their cars, right? They can buy their cars outright. They can buy their goods outright. That's not the banker's model. The maker's model is that we don't want you to have real goods, we don't want you to have real wages. We want you to have, uh, you know, basically just access to credit and debt and to be enslaved to our economic system. And that's really what was behind everything, whether it's communism, neoliberalism, capitalism, talking about, people actually having sovereign wages and actually having, a decent lifestyle they can afford and actually pay for and own, as opposed to owning it on credit or never really owning it themselves.
Right. The and I feel like a lot of that is like, the banks are always too looking for people to absorb debt. People who don't mind paying 30% interest on something, that sort of thing. That of course lends to a lot of your problems with globalism too. But let me tell you that identifying that should be like the equivalent of learning to read and write for someone's journey into understanding politics.
Right.
Understanding globalists, you'll start understanding everything else too, in my opinion.
Yes.
And what other projects are you working on right now?
So much is on hold, right? Hold with the global economy basically on lockdown, or at least American, and who knows how many countries are on lockdown. So it affects the ability to make the films that I want to do and whatnot. But the actual most currently I've been putting out some YouTube videos on my Conscious Creators channel. Um, Also on Patreon.com, doing my meditations, but videos just trying to inform people and give people some spiritual insights and clarity. I think it's important to have that guidance to realize that we are not living in, doom and gloom and this pandemic. It's not about that. What's happening right now is, I believe, an end time, literally end of time as we know it, inevitability that was scripted long ago. And there's no cool stuff is coming to pass. There's a new world on the other side of it. A lot of Christians, I think, get caught up with the idea of the end times and revelations and forget that it doesn't mean the end of the world. It's the end of an old system, an old modality, and the Christ consciousness is here. It's very present. It's already accessible if we just open ourselves to that spirit of love and charity and forgiveness and compassion, right? All the principles that were spread for a reason. Even though I have a lot of issues with the Roman Catholic Church and how they tampered with the texts and the truth of the message, of the Christ message, I do think that the essence of the message is there. It's up to us to embody, embody basically in this lifetime.
Right.
And so I feel like opportunity of being as each one of us as sovereign beings. And I think the future is going to be much more about conscious communities coming together, working together, even as the dark side does its ultimately suicide agenda because it cannot create, as I said. So the conscious communities will see each other, work together, enable each other, and it's going to be an interesting 21st century. Like, really, there's a reason that these cycles happen. We saw this, basically 20-year cycles for the most part. We see big
Right.
crises around 20 years for a reason, right? 9/11 was about 20 years ago, and now this is the new big crisis. But it's to me, it's actually a much better crisis than having a full-on war, with China or Iran or something like that. I
Oh,
think this is a
most
much
definitely.
healthier crisis to go through, actually, because it brings people together in a way.
I'm really glad we avoided a war with Iran, which I'll tell you the truth. I'm not a very political guy. I'm just an artist. But at the same time, I vote for the candidate who's least likely to take us to war. That's usually
Right.
how whoever's whoever's doing the least amount of saber rattling gets my vote. It's kind of
Right.
how I do it. And I feel though that the Islamic world has been sort of an excuse for the military industrial complex to, of course, make more guns, make more tanks, and do their thing. Same as communism was an excuse.
Hmm.
And I really, besides the nuclear aspect of it, I believe we're way further away from war with Russia than we ever imagined.
Hmm.
And with this, you know, I feel like that us stoking the fires of the Islamic world, of course, we're seeing actual blood now,
Mm.
and that's what the military industrial complex needs, to justify what they do. So, and that's just my thoughts. I know I'm losing a lot of my own opinions here, but
Oh
it
yeah,
is
yeah, no, it is about the, I look at it like, if we could spend, you say you're an artist, I believe every human being is an artist. I believe every human being is a creator. And I think if we could spend the kind of money we do on the military to actually towards art, this would be a much healthier planet, right?
no
If we
much
could
different.
turn it, right, from the art of war into the war of art and actually, just deploy the artist and everybody. Man, our creativity is so boundless. Humans are so incredible. Like we create solutions to things. Every problem is solvable if you deploy human creativity. But as it is now, the old structure, the system was always designed to keep people in, you offer a solution and you control it, as opposed to saying let people follow their own creativity to solve things. We can solve the energy thing. We got free energy. I mean, we would have had it a century ago if we'd let Tesla do his thing. But I believe that,
Right.
all these things, whether it's free energy, whether it's the nature of just like how infrastructure should be designed in America, and how people are in prisons because they're basically not being stoked at a creative level. I mean, everything boils down to our creativity, right? Really, our biggest problems are we're not fostering the human spirit, the human creativity, the human desire for love and connection. And that's really what we are as humans. We're not here to hate each other and live in fear and squalor and, like all these artificial realities that have been created to enslave us. It's like that's why I'm so happy to see the system signs. You can step back and realize maybe that system wasn't healthy in the first place.
Right.
Maybe you want to change things up, right? Okay, get out of that city, get out, get back to the countryside, or just to a smaller city or a town. Get back to nature, reconnect to things that matter, and realize maybe that wasn't the job for you, maybe that wasn't the system for you, and it's okay. And it's like, people hate when things are disrupted, they hate change, but sometimes you got to bring everything to a halt to stimulate that change and realize that I say it like this: you can't put on your royal robes if you're attached to a dirty old coat. And most people are attached to wearing that dirty old coat.
Right. And it's the kind of thing too that I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary things in most people's lives that zap what creative energy they have, and uh, they don't even know how to direct what they have to begin with. So, for instance, I feel like there's a lot of things like where we're always consumed with consumerism, for instance, instead of creating something, we go out and buy something, you know?
Yeah.
And like with you, what are some things you do to like stoke your creative fires to gain creative energy?
um, you know, for me, it's never been an issue, actually. For me, I'm happiest like times like
I can believe
this. Huh?
I can believe it.
Yeah, for me, I'm like, I can sit and just read and write. For me, reading has always been a tremendous uh, opportunity to stimulate creativity, because films, to a certain extent, I enjoy watching films, but reading, I find, stimulates my mind in a way I think most people realize. Right, when you read, you go to different worlds, right? You like it's to stoke you, and if like almost like poetry as well, I think stokes you in a way that can, and music in the same vein of poetry, that can start to visualize for yourself. So I always tell people, if you're having creative blocks or you don't feel stimulated, um, at a sonic level and a mental level, read or listen to poetry, and good music, not this garbage they put out and they call music. I
Right.
mean, like, mix it up, classical, Eastern. There's music from all over the world. I'm always shocked that like there's so much beautiful world music, and then you turn on the radio and it's like the same 40 songs over and over. I
It
mean,
is.
that's controlled and planned, right? That's an old
Right.
project, for the top 40 was always designed for brainwashing, but there's just so much music out there, right? And then I think going to nature also, like, you walk in a mountain, or you go to the beach, and like not just, to go play volleyball with friends, but like you actually just walk and like listen to the ocean, dive into the water. These are all things. I love music. I wish I could, play the instruments. But my thing is writing and storytelling as a, as a.
But when you started talking about music, a bird started singing almost immediately when you said that. And he was still singing, and I said, "What a magical interview moment!" And then the feed broke up right in the
Uh,
middle of the song, right in the middle of what you were saying.
okay, yeah.
So
So I'm saying that, music is is going for a hike, going to the water, listening to the ocean, diving in. I mean, these things are all stimulating. We have so many stimuli around us, and again, this is the dark side that wants us to be entangled and enmeshed in our smartphones, in our smart cities, in our chips, in our in our data, and all this control apparatus that's superficial. And yes, there's a room for technology. I'm not someone that's like saying get back to the land and throw away your computer and your phone. I'm just saying that you have to have a balance. There has to be a healthy balance between already the energy and the frequencies that are available to us in nature. That's why I'll never be someone that's going to promote, putting chips into my body and turning myself
no,
into a transhuman, because the human body is a magical thing, and the more you can tap into that and really explore it, do the Kundalini yoga, do the breathing techniques, do the qigong, start to realize that as you connect to breath, you start to activate and can't even begin to access. It's like our brain. We connect like to 10% of our brain system with our body. We don't really have a full experience with our body. So don't get lost with the idea of, putting yourself into a machine to augment your experience. Yeah, you can go into a machine, but don't turn yourself into a machine.
very good advice. Well, as far as books go, not the books you've written, but ones you've read recently that really have turned you on. What would you say are your top five on your reading list right now?
Oh man, I've got so many books on my reading list, but we can start with some stuff. Um, I've been diving deep into the sort of the transformational literature, I think you could say.
Right.
Um, the Mutants and Mystics is pretty cool. Mutants and Mystics by Jeff Kripal. Uh, the books by Whitley Strieber in general, the Communion series. I guess I've been reading a lot of like autobiography. A book called A Player's Tale by it's an anonymous book, but A Player's Tale was really fascinating, very transformational spiritual journey. And uh, I'm trying to think because I've been so deep into certain writing processes. There's actually a great story that people should know is Robert Williams' story, who was a black man who took on the KKK in Monroe, North Carolina in the 50s. And he's a tremendous character. Everyone should know about him. There's two great books on him, Radio Free Dixie and Black Crusader. Either one is just tremendous read, because this is a guy that every American can resonate with. He's a real hero. I mean, he's the kind of, the traditional American that stands up when you're being bullied and told what to do, and he says no, and he took up the right to bear arms, and he did it. And I think that kind of where we're being told to be pushovers, right? We're told to sort of be just we're told to be soft in a sense, as men, and not defend ourselves and our rights anymore. And it's like if you do that, you must be an alt-right kind of guy. Well, here's a black man who did it in the 50s, and I think he's a great role model for everybody.
I gotcha. Well, there's a couple of books that I've been reading recently, and my thing is I always go back. I take 10 years off from a book and then reread it at a different point in life, and that way, I just see like it reflects. It kind of helps reflect the changes you've made, the growth, hopefully,
Hmm.
and I do that a lot. I've got books I've had for 30 years that I just still break out and read once in a while. So, that's a good thing. That's the joy of having a humongous library, which I
I
do.
really
I
respect.
can insulate a house.
What's on your reading list right now? Give me some suggestions.
Oh, right now, tell you the truth, I have been reading. I'm a heathen, and I read a lot of I read a lot of heathenry, and golly, there's one. I don't even know if I should say the name of it. It's really over the top. it's it's a really controversial name. It's Jesus Christ was a coward. I'm reading that,
Hmm.
and I'm probably gonna lose some fans there, but get some angry emails. But I'm
Is it
reading. I'm just
is it
reading
a
it.
non is it a nonfiction or a fiction?
It's nonfiction.
Ah,
It's
go
it's
ahead,
so
tell me.
far it's a pretty it's so far it's okay. And then I'm reading. Of course, I'm always stuck in my mythology books. I'm reading an old paperback called War Day, which is about World War III. And then there's a pretty cool kind of coffee table type book called Diseases and Treatments, which is surprisingly scary, especially in this day and age.
Mm.
So, and then, of course, I read these and I beat myself back up all the time. That's Alligator Queen. That's my latest one. And then Bear in the Coast is another one of mine.
Oh,
And
cool.
I I've got four out, but I'm about to come out the 10th anniversary edition of my premiere novel. It's Cruel New World. So,
Ah,
and I gotta plug myself every now and again. So I'm rereading Cruel New World, and it's pretty much what's happening right now. Just it was 10 years ago I wrote the book. So there you go.
well, it's a pun on Brave New World, and that was certainly the talk about the dark addled slaves who love our servitude. Actually, that was Aldous Huxley said, we can perfect the mind control into the
Yep.
place where slaves love their servitude. Well, that's what Brave New World was. Brave New World was about. Um, and it's interesting though you mentioned the Christ was a coward book because there's a great uh, book. Well, there's a bunch of books, but one in particular called Caesar's Messiah, and it gets into how the Romans deployed the Christian teachings to
Yep.
actually suppress the Jews. And the idea is that the Christ teachings of the New Testament are basically not they're not adversarial towards the Romans. They're basically pacifist towards the Romans, who were the imperial conquerors. They were
Give to
conquering
Caesar
Jews.
what is Caesar's.
Huh? Right? Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Exactly. So it's like this is fighting against the Roman occupation and imperialism, and then ultimately, the Romans destroy the temple, they sack the city, they take the gold, they disperse the inhabitants, and then they promote essentially this Christianity, even though they say they don't. But actually, if you really look deeper, it was probably Josephus and other Jews like Josephus who became part of the Roman Empire, right? They became part of the Roman oligarchy and probably wrote the New Testament essentially to basically tell the Jews, all right, your Messiah has already come. It's over. He's basically said you're going to
Join
suffer,
the empire.
kind of
And
like with like Babylon. It's like, okay, we're gonna you're going to be captured now, and it's the end of Jerusalem. And so it's very interesting actually if you look at that argument that there was definitely a Roman intention to use the Messianic, right, the Jewish revolt, and to spread a pacifist religion, essentially. And ultimately, does it take over Rome? And I think Christianity has beautiful things to it. I'm not saying that there's no Christ consciousness. I believe in that. I believe in the character of the Christ, even though I don't know. I don't believe the story that's given to us in the New Testament is the
well,
full story.
he's really archetypical,
Right.
and that's true of all religions. I guess you have to have your archetypes in place, and I think so many things have been switched around between modern Christianity and Gnostic Christianity that it's the water's so muddy. You don't even know where to look.
Yeah.
So, but here we're a heathen household, and of course I've always got my patron god Braggy.
Who is that?
He's the god of poetry and eloquence. And I actually we have our altar here, and I brought the statuette in to kind of help me along for the interview. So
Yeah.
you know, as,
Yeah.
as a
You know,
totem.
exactly. I mean, the idea is, I think people have gotten so dogmatic about this stuff and insane about it, where it's like, we look for inspiration. The idea of inspiration from the different archetypes and the different, they call them gods, but I don't think it's like a God is such a it's a word that's been so bastardized that people
True.
don't really understand. It actually began God. If you look it up, gaudy, it's a fake thing. It's an ornamental fake thing, actually. If you look up the Old English of what God comes from, a fake thing. So I think people are kind of caught up with the wrong word. Um, there's a spiritual hierarchy. I think there's many beings, many entities. We're in an interdimensional universe. I believe that there's everything you can imagine exists. At the same time, that's neither male nor female. It's not, a man in the sky with a beard. It's not a woman goddess. It's just literally it's an energy form that has given birth to all of this. And it's, neither man nor woman, but it creates all existence. And then there's many other beings that come in between. And humans, believe it or not, we are pretty divine beings. We just don't tap into our divinity because we kind of get brainwashed into believing that we're just this low creature and in these societal structures that again are designed to enslave us.
I agree. And I believe that jealousy is a really negative thing to have in spirituality. And I believe that you should take what you can from everything. Really, I mean, I have found a lot of wisdom in Krishna consciousness, for example, and the Bhagavad Gita is like one of my favorite texts. I mean, I just Song of God, and I find a lot of wisdom in that. For instance, if I'd have been very dogmatic and said, "Oh no, it's my ancestral gods or nothing," then I'd have never found all that wisdom that I feel like really helps me in day to day life. So, and I believe that mainstream religion and whatnot, the jealousy involved and the dogma that goes along with it, that really causes problems for people's spiritual growth.
Exactly. That's why I've always been someone that challenged it. I said I accept Islam because I believe again it comes from the same principle as every other religion, and so when people heard that, they're like, oh, he's a Muslim now and this and that. It's like, no, we're not here to divide. I'm here to unite. I'm here to say that we all come from the same source, and it doesn't matter, whether you practice that through Hinduism, through Buddhism, through Islam, Judaism, Christianity. The same, you are open spiritually to the teachings, then that's a beautiful thing. But it's like when you use that teaching to control others, that's satanic. That's the side that I believe is satanic, even within the religions. I don't care if you claim that you're Christian, then you say, if you're I'm going to kill you because you believe something else, or I'm going to use my religion to kill you. That's satanic because you're claiming to be God, as opposed to
Right.
what religion is. It's an attempt to better understand God, right? To better understand that connection to source. We're trying to be, to really be better human beings. If you can use your spiritual teachings and your religion to become a better human being, more power to you. If you try to use that to lord over other people, that's the dark side.
Exactly. I've always said that your walk with God or God's, that's your own walk by yourself. Nobody can make it with you. Your walk with man, that's all of our business.
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you, it has been a really good interview, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to all of our readers. And once again, folks, you got to check out Buzzsaw. I'm telling you. I know that Buzzsaw is something that I don't care who you are and what you're all about, you'll enjoy Buzzsaw. And that's where I discovered you. I didn't realize I'd seen you on all these other movies, not knowing who I was seeing, of course, which is you know true of any movie, I guess. But Buzzsaw is just amazing. So, but I have certainly enjoyed the interview, and I really appreciate the opportunity.